A little girl warns Millionaire, "She tried to hurt me." He sets a trap. Before we explore this topic, like this video if you believe gentleness isn't weakness. Enjoy the story. Sometimes the most important warnings come from the smallest voices. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones we should fear. And sometimes a child's intuition can save not just their own life, but their parent's soul. This is the story of Ellie Cole, a 6-year-old girl with bright red hair and eyes that saw too much. Her father, Nathan, was a successful CEO who thought he had everything figured out. He'd built a thriving educational software company, provided a beautiful home, and after losing his beloved wife 2 years earlier, he was finally ready to give Ellie the mother figure he believed she needed. But Ellie knew something her father didn't. Something that would shatter everything Nathan thought he understood about love, trust, and protection. Nathan Cole stood in his spacious kitchen that morning. Morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked their manicured garden. At 39, he'd learned to navigate billion-dollar deals with ease, but deciphering his daughter's moods remained a mystery that haunted him daily. The coffee maker gurgled softly as he watched Ellie push cereal around her bowl, her usually bright demeanor clouded with something he couldn't quite name. "You're not eating, sweetheart," Nathan observed, settling into the chair across from her. The kitchen island between them felt like an ocean sometimes, especially in moments like these when Ellie seemed to drift into her own world. Ellie's green eyes flickered up to meet his, then darted away just as quickly. She'd been doing that a lot lately, ever since Clara had moved in 3 weeks ago. Nathan had attributed it to adjustment anxiety, the natural resistance any child might feel toward a stepmother figure. After all, it had been just the two of them for so long. "Not hungry, Daddy?" Her voice was smaller than usual, barely above a whisper. Nathan's chest tightened. He'd been so focused on building their future, on creating the perfect family unit he thought Ellie deserved, that he'd perhaps missed the signs that she wasn't ready. Clara had been wonderful with Ellie during their courtship, patient and gentle, everything Nathan had hoped for in a mother figure. She had a master's degree in education, understood child development, and seemed to genuinely care for Ellie's well-being. "Is it about the engagement party next weekend?" Nathan asked, reaching across to touch Ellie's small hand. "I know it's a big change having Clara here, but she loves you so much. We both do." Ellie's reaction was immediate and startling. She yanked her hand away as if burned, her chair scraping against the hardwood as she pushed back from the table. The sudden movement sent her orange juice glass teetering, and Nathan lunged forward to catch it before it crashed to the floor. "Ellie, what's wrong?" But she was already running, her small feet pattering up the staircase toward her bedroom. Nathan sat frozen, juice glass in hand, trying to understand what had just happened. In the silence that followed, he heard Clara's heels clicking down the hallway from their bedroom. "Everything all right down here?" Clara appeared in the doorway, perfectly composed in a silk blouse and pencil skirt, her dark hair swept into an elegant bun. Even at 7:30 in the morning, she looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. "I heard running." Nathan set the juice glass down carefully, his mind still processing Ellie's reaction. "She's been distant lately, not eating well, not sleeping through the night. Maybe we're moving too fast with the engagement." Clara's expression softened, and she moved to stand behind Nathan's chair, her hands settling on his shoulders with practiced comfort. "Children process change differently than adults, Nathan. You know this. She's testing boundaries, seeing if this new dynamic is stable. It's completely normal." But the way she pulled away just now, Nathan leaned into Clara's touch, seeking reassurance. "She's never done that before. She's probably feeling conflicted," Clara explained, her voice taking on the professional tone she used when discussing child psychology. "Part of her wants to accept me, but another part feels like she's betraying her mother's memory. It's a classic response to parental remarriage." Nathan nodded slowly. It made sense. Clara always made sense. That's what had drawn him to her in the first place. Her ability to understand complex emotional situations with clarity and wisdom. When they'd met at an educational conference 8 months ago, she'd impressed him not just with her beauty, but with her insight into child development and learning psychology. "Maybe I should talk to her," Nathan said, starting to rise. Clara's hands tightened slightly on his shoulders. "Give her some space this morning. Let her process. Pushing for conversation when she's emotional will only make her more resistant." Again, it sounded reasonable. Clara had studied these things after all. Nathan remained seated, though something nagged at him. A small voice that sounded suspiciously like his late wife Sarah, whispering that he should follow his instincts about their daughter. "I hired Lauren to help with Ellie's afternoon activities," Nathan said, changing the subject. "She starts today. I thought having another young woman around might help Ellie adjust to having feminine energy in the house again." Clara's hands stilled for just a moment before resuming their gentle massage of his shoulders. "A nanny? I thought we discussed that I'd be taking on more responsibility with Ellie's care. Lauren's not exactly a nanny, more like a companion. She's 27, has experience with children, and she'll just be here for a few hours after school. Help with homework, take Ellie to the park, that sort of thing." Nathan reached up to cover one of Clara's hands with his own. "You'll still be her primary mother figure. This just takes some pressure off during the transition." "Of course," Clara said, but Nathan thought he detected a slight edge to her voice. "Whatever you think is best." Upstairs, Ellie's bedroom door remained firmly closed. Nathan found himself staring at the ceiling, wondering what thoughts were swirling through his 6-year-old daughter's mind. He'd built his entire career on reading people, on understanding motivations and hidden agendas in business dealings. So why did he feel so lost when it came to the most important person in his world? The house settled around them. Expensive silence, broken only by the distant hum of traffic and the soft tick of the antique grandfather clock in the foyer. Clara's hands continued their soothing motion on his shoulders, but Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in their perfect morning routine. He didn't know it yet, but his daughter was upstairs, pressed against her bedroom door, listening to every word. And in her young mind, a terrible understanding was beginning to take shape. One that would soon force Nathan to choose between the woman he thought he loved and the child who needed him to believe in her more than he'd ever believed in anything before. Have you ever felt like something was wrong, but couldn't quite put your finger on what it was? Sometimes our instincts whisper truths that our minds aren't ready to hear. Stay with me as we discover what Ellie's trying to tell her father. 3 days later, Nathan was reviewing quarterly reports in his home office when he heard Ellie's footsteps in the hallway. Unlike her usual cheerful skip, these steps were hesitant, almost careful. He looked up from his laptop to find her standing in his doorway, clutching her stuffed elephant Mr. Peanuts against her chest. "Daddy?" Her voice carried a tremor that immediately had Nathan's full attention. "Come here, sweetheart." He pushed his chair back from the mahogany desk and opened his arms. Ellie approached slowly, her green eyes scanning the room as if checking for listeners before climbing onto his lap. "Where's Clara?" she whispered. "She went to the spa with her sister. Won't be back until dinner." "Why?" Ellie's small body relaxed slightly against his chest, and Nathan felt his heart clench at the realization that his daughter had been waiting for Clara to leave before coming to him. When had that started happening? "Daddy, I need to tell you something important." Ellie's voice was still barely above a whisper, but there was an urgency in it that made Nathan's stomach tighten. "You can tell me anything, Ellie, you know that." She nodded, but her grip on Mr. Peanuts tightened. "Promise you won't get mad?" "I promise." Ellie took a shaky breath, the kind Nathan had seen her take before admitting to breaking something valuable or drawing on the walls. But this felt different, heavier. "Miss Clara tried to push me into the pool yesterday," she said in a rush, the words tumbling out like water from a broken dam. "When we were outside and you were on your phone call. She grabbed my arm really tight and tried to push me toward the deep end, but Lauren came around the corner and Miss Clara let go really fast and pretended she was just playing with me." Nathan's world tilted slightly on its axis. He stared down at his daughter's earnest face, searching for signs of the elaborate imagination that sometimes colored her stories. But there was no fantastical element here. No talking animals or magical transformations. Just a simple, terrifying accusation. Ellie, are you sure? Maybe Clara was just playing and it felt different than you expected? No, Daddy. Ellie's voice grew stronger, more insistent. Her face was angry, really angry, and she whispered something mean about how I should learn to swim better. But when Lauren came, her face changed really fast and she smiled and said we were just having fun. Nathan's mind raced. Clara had mentioned yesterday that she'd spent some time with Ellie by the pool while he was taking a conference call with investors. She'd seemed normal at dinner, chatting about wedding plans and asking Ellie about her day at school. There had been no mention of any incident, no suggestion that anything unusual had happened. Did Lauren see what happened? Ellie nodded vigorously. She asked me if I was okay after Miss Clara went inside. She said Miss Clara was holding my arm too tight and wanted to make sure I wasn't hurt. Nathan felt something cold settle in his chest. Lauren had been with them for only 3 days, but she'd already proven herself to be observant and genuinely caring toward Ellie. She had no reason to lie or misinterpret a harmless interaction. Show me your arm, sweetheart. Ellie pushed up, the sleeve of her pink sweater revealing her small forearm. Nathan's breath caught. There on her pale skin were 5 distinct finger-shaped bruises already fading to yellow-green but unmistakably the marks of a tight grip. When did these happen? Yesterday when she grabbed me. Lauren put ice on them and said maybe I shouldn't tell you because you might get worried about nothing. But they still hurt and I got scared. Nathan gently traced the marks with his finger, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. These weren't the kind of bruises that came from rough play or accidental grabbing. They were too deliberate, too perfectly formed. Someone had gripped his daughter's arm with enough force to leave lasting marks. Ellie, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You did the right thing telling me this. I'm never going to be angry at you for telling me when someone hurts you, even if it's someone I care about. Do you understand? Ellie nodded, tears beginning to gather in her eyes. Are you going to ask Miss Clara about it? Nathan hesitated. Every instinct screamed that he should confront Clara immediately, demand an explanation for the bruises on his daughter's arm. But another part of him, the part that had fallen in love with Clara's apparent warmth and intelligence, struggled to believe she could be capable of deliberately hurting a child. I'm going to figure out what happened, he said finally. But I need you to promise me something. If anyone ever tries to hurt you again, anyone at all, you come straight to me. Don't wait. Don't worry about getting someone in trouble. You come to me immediately. I promise, Daddy. Nathan held his daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo while his mind churned with terrible possibilities. How could he have missed this? How could he have been so focused on building what he thought was a perfect family that he'd failed to protect the most precious part of it? Daddy? Ellie's voice was muffled against his chest. Yes, sweetheart. I don't want Miss Clara to be my new mommy. The words hit Nathan like a physical blow. For months, he'd been telling himself that Ellie would warm up to Clara, that children just needed time to adjust to change. He'd been so confident in his choice, so certain that Clara's professional background and apparent affection for Ellie made her the perfect partner. Why not, Ellie? Besides what happened yesterday. Ellie pulled back to look at him, her young face serious in a way that made Nathan's heart ache. She's different when you're not looking. Her voice gets mean and her eyes get scary. And she doesn't really like me, Daddy, she pretends, but I can tell. Nathan had built his career on reading people, on seeing through facades and understanding hidden motivations. But somehow, when it came to the woman he'd planned to marry, he'd been blind. Or maybe he'd chosen to be blind, so desperate to give Ellie a mother and himself a partner that he'd ignored warning signs that now seemed glaringly obvious. What do you mean her voice gets mean? Like yesterday after Lauren left. Miss Clara said I was a sneaky little girl and that I better not go crying to Daddy about every little thing or she'd give me something real to cry about. Each word felt like a knife twisting in Nathan's chest. His 6-year-old daughter was describing emotional abuse and he'd been completely oblivious to it happening under his own roof. Ellie, I am so sorry I didn't see this sooner. I should have been paying better attention. It's okay, Daddy, you were busy with work stuff. But it wasn't okay. Nathan realized he'd been failing in his most important job, protecting his daughter. He'd been so focused on providing for her financially and creating what he thought was a stable family structure that he'd missed the signs that she was being threatened in her own home. "We're going to fix this," he said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "I promise you we're going to fix this." As Nathan held his daughter close, his mind was already working, planning his next moves. He needed to talk to Lauren, needed to document the bruises, needed to figure out who Clara really was beneath the polished exterior she presented to him. But most importantly, he needed to start listening to his daughter with the same attention he gave to million-dollar business deals. Because Ellie was worth more than all of them combined, and she'd been trying to tell him something that could save both their lives. If you're a parent or grandparent, you know how precious those little voices are. Sometimes children see truths that we adults miss completely. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that remind us why listening to our children might be the most important thing we ever do. The next morning, Nathan found himself watching Clara with new eyes as she moved through their morning routine. She seemed perfectly normal, humming softly as she prepared her usual green smoothie, asking about his schedule for the day, discussing plans for their engagement party. But now every gesture, every word was filtered through the lens of Ellie's accusation. "Good morning, sweetheart," Clara said as Ellie appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed for school in jeans and a purple t-shirt. Her voice was warm, exactly the tone Nathan had always appreciated about her interactions with his daughter. Ellie mumbled a greeting and slid into her chair at the breakfast table, keeping her eyes fixed on her plate. Nathan noticed how she positioned herself as far from Clara as possible, while still remaining at the table. "I made your favorite pancakes," Clara announced, setting a plate in front of Ellie with a flourish. "Blueberry with just a little bit of whipped cream, exactly how you like them." "Thank you," Ellie whispered, but she didn't touch the fork. Nathan watched this interaction with growing unease. Clara seemed genuinely caring, but Ellie's body language screamed discomfort. His daughter sat rigid in her chair, shoulders hunched forward as if protecting herself from an invisible threat. "Aren't you hungry, sweetheart?" Clara asked, settling into her own chair with her smoothie. "You barely ate dinner last night either." "I'm okay," Ellie replied, finally picking up her fork, but only pushing the pancakes around her plate. Nathan was about to intervene when the doorbell rang. "That'll be Lauren," he said, grateful for the interruption. "She's going to walk you to school today, Ellie." The change in his daughter was immediate and dramatic. Her shoulders relaxed, her face brightened, and she actually took a bite of pancake. "Really? Really? I thought it might be nice for you to have some company on the walk." Nathan went to answer the door, finding Lauren on the front step with a warm smile and a colorful backpack slung over her shoulder. At 27, she had an easy, natural way with children that reminded Nathan of his late wife. Her brown hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her jeans and sneakers suggested someone more interested in function than fashion. "Good morning, Mr. Cole. Ready for our adventure, Ellie?" Ellie practically bounced out of her chair, abandoning her, barely touched breakfast to grab her school backpack. The contrast between her demeanor now and just moments ago was striking. "Hold on, sweetheart," Nathan said. "Finish your breakfast first." "But Daddy, we'll be late for school." "We have plenty of time," Lauren assured her, checking her watch. "Maybe I could have a quick cup of coffee while you eat." Nathan led Lauren into the kitchen where Clara was still seated at the table, observing the interaction with what appeared to be polite interest. But Nathan thought he detected something else in her expression, something that flickered across her features too quickly to identify. "Clara, this is Lauren, Ellie's new companion. Lauren, this is my fiancée, Clara." "It's so nice to meet you," Lauren said, extending her hand with genuine warmth. "Ellie's told me wonderful things about you." Clara's smile seemed to freeze for just a moment before she accepted the handshake. "Has she? How lovely. Nathan mentioned you'd be helping with Ellie's after-school activities. And the occasional school walk?" Lauren agreed, accepting the cup of coffee Nathan offered her. I hope you don't mind the intrusion into your morning routine. Not at all. Though I do worry about Ellie getting too attached to temporary arrangements. Nathan frowned at the comment. He hadn't mentioned anything about Lauren's position being temporary, because it wasn't. In fact, he'd been considering expanding her hours based on how well she and Ellie had connected. Oh, I don't think there's anything temporary about it, Lauren replied easily, but Nathan caught the slight tension in her voice. Mr. Cole and I discussed this being a long-term arrangement. An uncomfortable silence settled over the kitchen. Ellie, who had been nibbling at her pancakes, suddenly pushed her plate away. I'm done. Can we go now? You've barely eaten anything, Clara observed, and this time Nathan was certain he heard an edge to her voice. Growing girls need proper nutrition. I'm not hungry, Ellie said, sliding off her chair. Ellie, Clara's voice sharpened slightly. Sit back down and finish your breakfast. The command was delivered with such authority that even Nathan felt compelled to respond. But Ellie's reaction was immediate and telling. She shrank back against Lauren's legs, her small body trembling. It's okay, Lauren said quickly, her hand settling protectively on Ellie's shoulder. Sometimes kids aren't hungry in the morning. There's no harm in wrapping up the pancakes for an after-school snack. I hardly think you're qualified to make decisions about Ellie's nutritional needs, Clara snapped, then immediately seemed to catch herself. I'm sorry, that came out wrong. I just worry about her eating habits. But the damage was done. Nathan had seen it, the flash of something cold and controlling in Clara's expression, the way Ellie had instinctively sought protection from Lauren. Most telling of all was Lauren's reaction, protective, alert, as if she'd witnessed something like this before. Why don't you and Lauren head to school? Nathan suggested, his voice carefully neutral. I'll see you this afternoon, sweetheart. Ellie hugged him goodbye, her small arms clinging a moment longer than usual. Love you, Daddy. Love you too, Ellie. Have a good day. As Nathan watched through the window, he noticed how Ellie practically skipped once they were outside, chattering animatedly to Lauren as they headed down the sidewalk. It was like watching a flower bloom in sunlight after being kept in shadows. She seems very attached to the nanny, Clara observed, her tone carefully casual. Lauren's good with her. Ellie needs that right now. I worry that she's using Lauren to avoid bonding with me. Children sometimes play caregivers against each other. Nathan turned from the window to study Clara's face. Is that what you think is happening? I think Ellie is struggling with change, and having another woman in the house giving her attention might be enabling her resistance to accepting me as a mother figure. The words made sense on the surface, but something about Clara's delivery bothered Nathan. There was a clinical quality to her assessment, as if she were discussing a case study rather than his daughter's emotional well-being. Maybe we should talk to Lauren about what she's observed, Nathan suggested. Get her perspective on how Ellie's adjusting. Clara's coffee cup clinked against the saucer as she set it down, a sharp sound in the quiet kitchen. I'm not sure that's appropriate. We shouldn't put an employee in the position of evaluating family dynamics. She's not evaluating, I'm asking for her observations. Nathan, I have a master's degree in education and child development. I think I'm better qualified to assess Ellie's emotional state than someone we've known for 3 days. There it was. Again, that edge of authority. The suggestion that questioning Clara's judgment was somehow inappropriate. Nathan felt a familiar sensation, the same one he experienced during business negotiations when someone was trying to manipulate him through appeals to expertise or authority. That afternoon, when Lauren brought Ellie home from school, Nathan asked if they could talk privately while Ellie played in the garden. Lauren, I need to ask you about yesterday, when you came around the corner and found Clara and Ellie by the pool. Lauren's expression grew serious immediately. Has Ellie said something? She told me Clara grabbed her arm hard enough to leave bruises. She said you witnessed it. Lauren was quiet for a long moment, her eyes moving to the window where they could see Ellie chasing butterflies among the roses. Mr. Cole, I don't want to cause problems in your relationship. The only problem would be if my daughter is being hurt and I don't do anything about it. Tell me what you saw. When I came around the corner, Clara had Ellie's arm in what looked like a very tight grip. Ellie was trying to pull away and Clara was Her expression was angry. Really angry. The moment she saw me, her whole demeanor changed. She smiled and said they were just playing, but Ellie looked scared. Nathan felt sick. Did you see her try to push Ellie toward the pool? Not exactly push, but she was definitely pulling Ellie in that direction, toward the deep end. And when I asked Ellie if she was okay after Clara went inside, she said her arm hurt, and that Clara had said something about her needing to learn to swim better. What did you tell Ellie? I put ice on her arm and told her she should talk to you if anyone ever made her feel unsafe. I didn't want to overstep, but... Lauren hesitated. But what? Mr. Cole, I've worked with a lot of families. I've seen how normal adult-child interactions look, even when there's discipline involved. What I saw yesterday wasn't normal. It was aggressive. And the way Clara's entire personality shifted when she realized she was being observed. That's concerning behavior. Nathan nodded slowly, pieces of a terrible puzzle beginning to fit together in his mind. Has Ellie said anything else to you about Clara? She's mentioned that Clara is different when you're not around. She seems genuinely afraid of being alone with her. That's why she always asks where Clara is before coming to find you. The weight of his failure as a father settled on Nathan's shoulders like a lead blanket. How many times had Ellie tried to tell him something was wrong? How many signs had he missed while focusing on his own desire for companionship and his assumptions about what his daughter needed? Mr. Cole, can I ask you something? Of course. How well do you really know Clara? I mean, beyond what she's told you about herself? It was a simple question, but it hit Nathan like a physical blow. How well did he know her? They'd met 8 months ago, had dated for 6 months before he proposed. He knew she had a master's degree in education, knew she'd been married briefly in her 20s, knew she claimed to love children and wanted to be a mother. But when he really thought about it, how much of that knowledge came from his own investigation versus what Clara had simply told him? I'm going to look into some things, Nathan said finally. In the meantime, I don't want Ellie left alone with Clara. Can you increase your hours? Be here whenever I'm not? Absolutely. Whatever Ellie needs. Trust is such a fragile thing, isn't it? Especially when it comes to the people we let into our children's lives. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who know exactly how to appear trustworthy. That night, after Clara had fallen asleep beside him, Nathan lay awake staring at the ceiling. The woman breathing softly next to him, the woman he'd planned to marry in 2 weeks, suddenly felt like a stranger. At 3 in the morning, he slipped quietly out of bed and made his way to his home office. Nathan's first stop was the security system. His house was equipped with comprehensive surveillance, cameras in every common area, motion sensors, and digital recording that stored footage for 30 days. If something had happened by the pool, there should be evidence. His fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency, navigating to the previous day's footage. The cameras were motion-activated and time-stamped, making it easy to find the relevant period when he'd been on his conference call. There, 2:47 p.m., camera 3, which covered the pool area. Nathan's blood ran cold as he watched the scene unfold. Clara and Ellie appeared in frame, Clara's hand gripping Ellie's upper arm exactly as his daughter had described. Even through the grainy security footage, Nathan could see the tightness of Clara's grip, the way Ellie was trying to pull away. Then, Clara began moving toward the pool's deep end, not gently guiding but forcefully pulling. Ellie's body language screamed fear, her free arm windmilling for balance, her small legs stumbling to keep up with Clara's determined pace. Nathan watched, his fiancée lean down and say something to his daughter that made Ellie's face crumple in terror. Clara's expression, even captured in black and white pixels, was cold and threatening in a way that made Nathan's stomach turn. Then Lauren appeared, jogging around the corner from the garden path. The transformation in Clara was instantaneous and chilling. Her grip on Ellie released immediately, her posture softened, and by the time Lauren reached them, Clara was wearing the warm smile Nathan thought he knew so well. But he'd seen what happened before that smile. He'd seen the real Clara, the one Ellie had been trying to warn him about. Nathan played the footage 3 more times, each viewing making him more certain that his 6-year-old daughter had been telling him the absolute truth. Clara had deliberately hurt Ellie and had been moving her toward the deep end of the pool with clear malicious intent. His hands shook as he copied the footage to a secure drive. Then he began the much more difficult task of checking other camera feeds from the past 3 weeks, looking for incidents he might have missed. What he found made him sick. Camera after camera showed a pattern of behavior that Nathan had been completely blind to. Clara alone with Ellie in the kitchen, her face twisted in anger as she gripped Ellie's shoulders and spoke directly into her face. Clara in the living room, roughly jerking Ellie's arm when she thought no one was watching. Clara in the hallway, backing Ellie against the wall with body language that was clearly intimidating. The worst was footage from just 5 days ago. Nathan had been working late, and Clara was supposed to be helping Ellie with homework. Instead, the dining room camera showed Clara grabbing Ellie's math workbook and throwing it across the room, then forcing Ellie to crawl on the floor to retrieve the scattered papers while she stood over her, clearly berating the child. Through it all, Ellie never fought back, never raised her voice. She simply endured, the way children do when they're being systematically terrorized by an adult they have no power to escape. Nathan's successful businessman facade cracked completely as he watched his daughter being abused in his own home while he remained obliviously focused on work and wedding plans. The guilt was overwhelming, but it was nothing compared to the rage building in his chest. But Nathan forced himself to think strategically. Emotion wouldn't help Ellie now. He needed evidence, documentation, and a plan. His next call was to Mark Rodriguez, a police investigator who'd helped him navigate a complex copyright lawsuit 2 years earlier. Mark had become a friend during that difficult time, and Nathan trusted him completely. "Mark, I know it's early, but I need your help with something serious." "Nathan, it's 4 a.m. What's going on?" "I need a background check run on my fiancée. A deep one. I think she's been abusing Ellie." The line went quiet for a long moment. "Jesus, Nathan, are you sure?" "I have video evidence, but I need to know who she really is before I figure out what to do next. Send me everything you have on her. Full name, social security number if you have it, previous addresses, everything. I'll run it through the system and see what comes up." Nathan gathered every piece of documentation he had on Clara Whitman. Social security number from their joint insurance application, previous addresses from her rental history, her driver's license number, even her college transcripts which she'd shown him when they first discussed her educational background. Nathan spent the rest of the early morning hours going through financial records, looking for any unusual expenditures or activities. What he found added another layer of concern to an already devastating situation. Clara had been using their joint credit card for purchases she'd never mentioned. Medical consultations with child psychiatrists, bills for services supposedly, related to evaluating a difficult child's behavioral problems. When Nathan called the offices, he discovered that Clara had been describing Ellie as having severe emotional and behavioral issues. Seeking medication recommendations for a child Nathan knew was perfectly healthy and well-adjusted. The picture becoming clear was far worse than simple abuse. Clara appeared to be systematically building a case to portray Ellie as disturbed, possibly setting the stage for some kind of institutional placement that would remove Ellie from Nathan's life entirely. When Mark called that afternoon, the information he provided confirmed Nathan's worst fears and added new dimensions to the horror. "Clara Whitman doesn't exist," Mark said without preamble. "I mean, the social security number is real, but it belongs to a different person. The woman you know as Clara is actually Clara Manning, and she has a record." Nathan's hands went numb. "What kind of record?" "Restraining orders from 2 different states. Child endangerment charges that were dropped when witnesses recanted their testimony. And Nathan, she was investigated for the suspicious death of her stepson in Colorado 3 years ago." The world tilted sideways. Nathan gripped the phone, so hard his knuckles went white. "Death?" "A 7-year-old boy. Officially ruled accidental drowning, but the investigating officers had serious doubts. The kid supposedly fell into a swimming pool while Clara was the only adult present." Sound familiar? Nathan thought about the security footage, about Clara dragging Ellie toward the deep end of their pool while he was distracted by work. "Oh God," there's more. Clara Manning has a pattern. She targets single fathers with young children, insinuates herself into their lives, and then systematically abuses the children while presenting herself as the perfect stepmother to the father. In Colorado, she almost succeeded in having her stepson declared mentally unstable and institutionalized before he died. She's been taking Ellie to psychiatrists, Nathan whispered, trying to get her diagnosed with behavioral disorders. Classic pattern: make the child appear unstable, isolate them from support systems, then either remove them entirely or, worse. Nathan felt bile rise in his throat. Mark, she's living in my house. She has access to Ellie every day. Then we need to move fast. But Nathan, you can't just confront her. Women like Clara are dangerous when cornered. They escalate. What do you suggest? We set a trap. Get her to reveal herself in a way that provides ironclad evidence. And we do it before she realizes you're onto her. As Nathan hung up the phone, one thought echoed in his mind. His 6-year-old daughter had tried to save both their lives, and he'd almost failed to listen. But Ellie had given him a gift more precious than his business empire or his own happiness. She'd given him the truth. Now it was time to use that truth to protect her, no matter what it cost him. The worst betrayals often come from those we trust most. Sometimes saving the people we love means facing truths we never wanted to believe. Stay with us as Nathan prepares to confront a monster hiding behind a perfect smile. 2 days later, Nathan had everything in place. Mark had helped him install additional hidden cameras throughout the house, positioned to capture audio as well as video. Lauren had been briefed and was prepared to document any incidents. Most importantly, Nathan had created the perfect opportunity to give Clara enough rope to hang herself. He'd told her he had to fly to Seattle for an emergency board meeting, a last-minute crisis that required his immediate attention. The trip was fabricated, of course. Instead, Nathan would be monitoring the house from his office downtown, watching through the hidden camera feeds as Clara revealed her true nature without his moderating presence. I hate leaving you to handle everything with the engagement party. So close, Nathan said that morning, playing his part perfectly as he packed his overnight bag. Are you sure you'll be okay managing Ellie's routine alone? Of course, darling, Clara replied, but Nathan caught the flash of satisfaction in her eyes. Ellie and I will have some quality bonding time. It'll be good for us. Nathan's stomach clenched at the words. Every instinct screamed against leaving Ellie, even with Lauren scheduled to arrive by noon. But this was the only way to get the evidence they needed to put Clara away permanently. Lauren will be here to help, Nathan reminded her, watching Clara's reaction carefully. Actually, I was thinking we might not need Lauren today. Ellie and I should spend some time together without outside interference. There it was, the first red flag. Clara was already trying to isolate Ellie from her protection. I think it's important to maintain Ellie's routine, Nathan said firmly. Lauren will be here at noon as scheduled. Clara's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course. Whatever you think is best. From his downtown office, Nathan watched the camera feeds with growing anxiety. For the first hour after his departure, Clara maintained her normal facade. She helped Ellie with her coloring book, prepared a snack, even played a board game in the living room. But at 11:30, with Lauren's arrival imminent, everything changed. Nathan watched in horror as Clara's entire demeanor shifted. Her voice, which the hidden microphones captured clearly, became cold and threatening. Listen to me very carefully, you little brat, Clara hissed, gripping Ellie's shoulders with enough force to make the child wince. Your precious Lauren isn't going to save you today. I'm going to tell her you're sick and send her home, and then you and I are going to have a real conversation about your behavior. You're hurting me, Ellie whimpered, but Clara only tightened her grip. This is nothing compared to what happens to little girls who don't listen. Do you want to know what happened to Tommy in Colorado? The little boy who wouldn't stop telling lies about me? Nathan felt ice water flood his veins. Clara was threatening. His daughter with the death of her previous victim. I want my daddy, Ellie sobbed. Daddy isn't here. And when he comes back, you're going to tell him what a wonderful time we had together. Because if you don't... Clara leaned close to Ellie's ear, her voice dropping to a whisper that the sensitive microphones barely caught. I know how to make little girls disappear, and nobody will ever believe you over me. Nathan was already moving, grabbing his keys and racing for the elevator, but the scene continued to unfold on his phone screen as he drove toward home with reckless speed. When Lauren arrived, Clara met her at the door with an Oscar-worthy performance. Oh, Lauren, I'm so sorry, but Ellie's feeling quite ill today. Fever and upset stomach. I think it's best if she rests quietly instead of having company. Nathan could see Lauren's confusion through the door camera. Is she okay? Should I take her to the doctor? No, just a little bug. I'm perfectly capable of caring for her today. Why don't you take the day off? Lauren hesitated, clearly torn between following Clara's instructions and her obvious concern for Ellie. Could I just peek in and say hello? I brought her a book she wanted. I really think it's best if she's not disturbed. Children need rest when they're unwell. Nathan watched Lauren reluctantly leave, her body language suggesting she wasn't entirely convinced by Clara's explanation. Good. At least someone else would notice that something was wrong. But now Ellie was alone with a woman who had just threatened her with death. Nathan called Mark while speeding through downtown traffic. It's happening. She's isolated Ellie and she's escalating. I'm heading home now. I'm 10 minutes behind you. Don't confront her alone, Nathan. Wait for backup. But Nathan couldn't wait. On his phone screen, he watched Clara drag Ellie upstairs, away from most of the cameras. The remaining audio picked up Ellie's terrified cries and Clara's increasingly vicious threats. Stupid little brat. You think you can turn your father against me? I've worked too hard to let a spoiled 6-year-old ruin everything. Nathan heard the sound of his daughter being shoved against a wall, heard her small voice begging Clara to stop. He pressed the accelerator harder, running red lights and taking corners at dangerous speeds. When he reached the house, Nathan forced himself to be strategic. Instead of bursting through the front door, he used his key quietly and made his way to the back staircase that would let him reach the second floor without being detected. The sounds coming from Ellie's bedroom made his blood boil. Clara was systematically terrorizing his daughter, describing in graphic detail what happened to children who caused problems for their new mothers. Nathan positioned himself outside Ellie's door, phone ready to record additional evidence. What he heard nearly broke his heart. Please, Miss Clara, Ellie sobbed. I'm sorry I told Daddy about the pool. I won't tell him anything else, I promise. Too late for promises, you little liar. You've already ruined everything. But I'm going, to make sure you can't cause any more problems. Nathan heard movement, heard Ellie's sharp cry of pain and couldn't wait any longer. He burst through the door to find Clara with her hands around his daughter's throat, pressing her against the bedroom wall. Get away from her, Nathan roared, his voice carrying all the fury of a father whose child was being murdered before his eyes. Clara spun around, her face a mask of pure malice that Nathan had never seen before. This wasn't the woman who'd shared his bed and planned their wedding. This was a predator, caught in the act of destroying her prey. Nathan, you're supposed to be in Seattle. Clara's voice cracked with panic, but her hands didn't immediately. Release Ellie. Let go of my daughter. Now. For a moment, Clara seemed to consider her options. Nathan could see her calculating, trying to figure out how to talk her way out of this. Then her expression shifted again, becoming the concerned stepmother Nathan thought he knew. Nathan, thank God you're here. Ellie's been having some kind of episode. She was hurting herself, and I was trying to calm her down. It was masterfully done. If Nathan hadn't seen the security footage, hadn't heard the threats, hadn't watched Clara's transformation from loving fiancé to child predator, he might have believed her. Daddy. Ellie broke free from Clara's loosened grip and ran to Nathan, her small body shaking with trauma. Nathan scooped up his daughter, feeling the tremors that ran through her small frame. Over Ellie's head, he stared at Clara with absolute contempt. I saw everything, Clara. The cameras, the audio, all of it. Clara's mask slipped completely. The warm, loving woman disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Nathan. That child has been lying to you from the beginning. She's disturbed, and she needs professional help. The only disturbed person in this house is you. You'll regret this, Clara said, her voice carrying a threat that made Nathan's skin crawl. I know things about you, about your business. I can destroy everything you've built. Try it, Nathan said quietly. I'd rather lose everything than let you hurt my daughter for one more second. Mark arrived with backup officers just as Clara was gathering her things, still muttering threats and accusations. As they read her rights and placed her in handcuffs, she maintained her innocence to the end. You're making a terrible mistake, she told Nathan as they led her away. That child is dangerous. She'll destroy you just like she's destroying me. But Nathan wasn't listening anymore. All his attention was focused on Ellie, on reassuring his traumatized daughter that she was safe, that the monster was gone, that Daddy would never let anyone hurt her again. I believe you, sweetheart. I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner. You were trying to protect us both. It's okay, Daddy, Ellie whispered back. You saved me when it mattered most. Trust your children's instincts. Trust your own gut feelings. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is listen to the small voices that are trying to warn us about danger. 1 year after Clara's sentencing, Nathan stood in their kitchen watching Ellie help Lauren make cookies for a school bake sale. The scene was so normal, so peacefully domestic, that it sometimes felt like the nightmare with Clara had happened to someone else entirely. But small changes reminded Nathan daily of what they'd survived. Ellie still checked to see who was home before entering any room. She still preferred having Lauren nearby when Nathan worked late, and she still asked questions about new people with the careful instincts of someone who'd learned that not every smiling adult could be trusted. Daddy, can we add extra chocolate chips? Ellie asked, flour dusting her nose as she stirred cookie dough with intense concentration. It's your project, sweetheart. You decide. Nathan had learned to give Ellie more control over her choices, even small ones like cookie ingredients. Dr. Sarah Martinez, Ellie's therapist, had explained that children who'd been victimized by controlling adults needed to rebuild their sense of agency gradually. The therapy sessions had been difficult, but necessary. For months, Ellie had nightmares about Clara returning to finish what she'd started. She'd developed anxiety about being alone in any room, fear of swimming pools, and a startled response to unexpected visitors that broke Nathan's heart. But children are remarkably resilient when they have proper support. With Lauren's consistent presence and Dr. Martinez's gentle guidance, Ellie had slowly reclaimed her natural confidence and joy. That evening, Nathan and Ellie had their weekly checking-in conversation while making dinner together. It had become one of Nathan's favorite traditions, a time when they could discuss anything important while their hands were busy with cooking tasks. How was school this week, sweetheart? Nathan asked, as Ellie carefully measured ingredients for their homemade pizza dough. Good. Mrs. Patterson introduced us to the new student teacher, Miss Rodriguez. She's really nice. Nathan's protective instincts engaged automatically. What makes you think she's nice? Ellie considered the question with the thoughtfulness she'd developed over the past 2 years. She asked us what we wanted to learn about instead of just telling us what we had to do. And when Jimmy had trouble with his math, she sat with him quietly instead of making him feel embarrassed. She pays attention to how we feel, not just whether we're following rules. Nathan smiled at his daughter's sophisticated analysis. Those are good observations. How does she make you feel when you're around her? Safe. Like I can ask questions without getting in trouble. Like she actually cares about us as people. Those are exactly the right things to notice about adults, Ellie. I'm proud of how carefully you think about these things. Daddy? Ellie's voice grew more serious as she kneaded the pizza dough. Do you ever worry that I'm too careful about people now? Sophie's mom said her grandmother thinks I'm an old soul, and that it's sad for a kid to be so watchful. Nathan paused in his sauce preparation, choosing his words carefully. Ellie, you've learned things about people that most kids don't have to learn until they're much older. That does make you different from other children your age. But different isn't bad. It doesn't feel bad most of the time. It feels like I have special powers for understanding people. That's a perfect way to think about it. You do have special powers. You can see through people who aren't genuine, and you can recognize adults who are truly safe and caring. Those are incredibly valuable abilities. Daddy, I'm glad Miss Clara taught me how to recognize fake people even though she was scary. Now I can tell the difference between adults who really care about kids and adults who are just pretending. Nathan felt a complex surge of emotions, pride in his daughter's resilience, sadness that she'd needed to learn such lessons so young, and gratitude that she'd found a way to transform trauma into wisdom. That's a very grown-up way to think about what happened to us, Ellie. You turned something bad into something that makes you stronger and smarter. Lauren says that's what brave people do. They take bad experiences and use them to help other people. Lauren's right. And you've already helped other people by being brave enough to tell the truth about Clara. Detective Rodriguez told me that your testimony helped protect other children from getting hurt. Ellie's eyes widened. Really? How? By speaking up, you helped grown-ups understand how people like Clara trick families. Now other parents know what warning signs to watch for. So maybe some other kid won't have to be scared like I was. Exactly. Your courage made the world a little bit safer for other children. Later that evening, as Nathan tucked Ellie into bed, she made a request that surprised him. Daddy, next time you want to date someone, can we all spend time together first? Not like pretend family time, but just regular time where I can see how they act when they think nobody important is watching. Nathan's heart swelled with love for his perceptive daughter. That's exactly what we'll do, sweetheart. In fact, I won't even consider dating anyone unless you think they're worth getting to know better. Promise? I promise. You and I are a team, and we make important decisions together. Ellie snuggled deeper into her blankets, her stuffed elephant Mr. Peanuts tucked securely beside her. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Ellie. More than all the stars in the sky. And all the fish in the ocean. And all the fish in the ocean. It was their traditional exchange, the same words Nathan had said to her every night since she was a toddler. But now those words carried additional weight, the promise of a father who had learned that love meant protection, attention, and above all, listening. They'd survived betrayal, terror, and the systematic assault on their family by a predator who'd understood exactly how to exploit their vulnerabilities, but they'd emerged stronger, wiser, and more deeply connected than ever before. Clara Manning was gone forever, locked away where she could never hurt another child. But the lessons she'd unwittingly taught them about trust, vigilance, and the importance of listening to children would protect them for the rest of their lives. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from avoiding danger, but from facing it with courage and emerging stronger on the other side. Thank you for staying with Nathan and Ellie's journey. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe for more stories that remind us why protecting our children is the most important job we'll ever have. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply listen when the smallest voices try to tell us the truth. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that children's instincts matter and that love means believing in them even when it's hard. Until next time, keep listening to the little voices in your life. They might just save you both.